If you want to build strong, meaningful relationships and avoid unnecessary drama, you need to recognize the signs of toxic behavior around you. Don't believe this common myth that everyone has good intentions. The truth is, there are people who might be subtly manipulating situations and sabotaging your progress without you even realizing it. In this video, we'll explore 9 evident signs that there could be an evil person in your life, and how understanding these signs through the lens of pragmatism philosophy can help you protect your energy and well-being. Number 1. Drains your energy. Consistently. Have you ever been around someone who, no matter how good your day is going, seems to sap all the energy from you? Maybe you're in a great mood, excited about something that just happened, perhaps a new opportunity, a victory at work, or even just a peaceful moment in your day. Then, this person enters the room, and before you know it, you feel sluggish, overwhelmed, or even worse, empty. They say a word here, a comment there, and slowly, you feel your energy being drained. It's almost as if their very presence creates a void that sucks the life out of everything around them. And the crazy part, you might not even realize it's happening until you're already feeling exhausted or defeated. This is a key sign of an evil or toxic person, and according to pragmatism philosophy, it's not just about how you feel emotionally in that moment. It's about the tangible effects this person has on your life. Emotions are real. They affect the way we interact with others, our productivity, and even our overall health. If someone consistently leaves you feeling mentally and physically drained, it's not just a bad day. It's a pattern that's affecting you on a practical level, and it's something you need to address. Remember the time you met someone who, despite your best intentions, always seemed to leave you more exhausted than before. Think back to how you felt after those interactions. Perhaps you told yourself you'd shake it off, but then you kept thinking about it, replaying their words in your mind, wondering what went wrong. Over time, these interactions add up, and before you know it, you're not just drained for a day, you're drained for weeks. It's more than just an annoying behavior. It's a consistent presence that wears you down, creating a ripple effect throughout your life. What if we look at this from a different perspective? The presence of a person who drains your energy isn't just about them. It's about what it does to you. And in a world where every day is a chance to move forward or fall behind, the energy we invest is precious. This is why pragmatism urges us to focus on the practical consequences. If someone consistently saps your energy, it's going to leave you less focused, less productive, and possibly more resentful. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's a practical loss. And that's why it's so important to recognize this behavior early on, before it spirals out of control. Number 2, manipulates for personal gain. We all know people who can charm their way through a conversation, make you feel special, and even make promises that sound too good to be true. At first it may seem harmless, like a little exaggeration here and there, maybe some white lies. But over time, as you start reflecting on these interactions, something doesn't sit right. It's as if every word, every gesture, every favor comes with strings attached. They promise to help you out, but only when it benefits them. They're the type of person who will lend a hand, only if they know they'll get something in return. It's subtle at first, but as you look closer, the truth starts to emerge. Their actions are not about genuine care, they're about control. According to pragmatism philosophy, the consequences of manipulative behavior aren't just moral, they're incredibly practical. Manipulation takes a toll, especially when it happens over and over again. Think back to a time when someone made you feel like you owed them something, even though their help didn't come free of charge. Maybe they were nice to you when it was convenient, but you quickly realized that their kindness always had an agenda. You might have even found yourself questioning their sincerity, but instead of confronting them, you tried to make sense of it in your head, rationalizing it with the hopes that it was just a one-time thing. But then it happens again, and again, and before long, you're caught in a cycle that feels almost impossible to break. The manipulation goes beyond just the immediate impact on your emotions. It's the ripple effect it has on your decisions. It can steer you away from opportunities that align with your true desires, or keep you stuck in unhealthy situations because you're bound by this unspoken agreement. You've probably felt conflicted about it. One part of you says, "This doesn't feel right," but the other part, influenced by their tactics, tries to convince you otherwise. In a pragmatic sense, that inner conflict becomes a barrier to clear decision-making, making it harder to take the necessary steps toward a better life. But what makes this even more unsettling is the realization that manipulative people don't just affect you in the moment, they shape your worldview. Over time, you might start to second-guess your instincts or doubt your ability to make decisions without their influence. The deeper this manipulation goes, the more difficult it becomes to break free from it. The practical consequences are real. You're stuck, and you're losing more than just time. You're losing control of your life. Number 3, lies and distorts the truth. When you're in a conversation, especially with someone you trust, you expect honesty. But then you hear something that just doesn't add up. Maybe it's a small inconsistency in their story, or a detail they left out. At first, it doesn't seem like a big deal. After all, everyone exaggerates from time to time, right? But then it happens again and again. The lies get bigger, more elaborate. The distortion of the truth becomes their reality, and suddenly, you're caught in a web of half-truths and deceit. It's as if you're in a dream where nothing is what it seems, and you're trying to piece together the fragments of a story that just doesn't hold up. Now think back to a time when someone lied to you in a way that left you confused and questioning everything. How did that make you feel? Maybe you were initially angry, or maybe you were hurt, but over time, you probably started to feel something more insidious: distrust. Once the truth starts to unravel, you realize that it's not just a matter of one lie, it's a pattern, and every lie chips away at your sense of security and self-trust. Pragmatism teaches us to look at the practical consequences of lies. If someone lies to you, it's not just about breaking trust, it's about the long-term effects on your life. Lies can lead to poor decisions, broken relationships, and even missed opportunities. Think about how a single lie can create doubt and confusion, making it harder for you to trust your own judgment. It's like walking through fog, where every step feels uncertain. When someone distorts the truth, they're not just altering the facts, they're altering your reality. And the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to differentiate between what's real and what's a fabrication. Now, consider this. What happens when someone lies consistently? You start to question not just their words, but everything they say. It's no longer about whether you can trust them in a specific situation. It's about the slow erosion of your confidence in them as a person. It might even make you question others in your life, wondering if they too are hiding something. In the pragmatic sense, this has huge implications. It affects not only your relationship with that person, but also your ability to make sound, informed decisions in all areas of your life. Lies create ripples that extend far beyond the initial deception, affecting your worldview and making it harder to find your way back to clarity. Number 4. Avoids responsibility for actions. There's a certain type of person who always seems to be one step ahead, never caught in a bind, never the one left holding the bag when things go wrong. When mistakes are made or situations fall apart, you can always count on them to be absent from the conversation, offering up an endless list of excuses. At first, you might give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just a slip-up, an accident, or someone else's fault. But over time, you begin to see the pattern. They're never the one to own up to the fallout, never the one to step forward and say, "I messed up." Instead, it's always someone or something else. Bad luck, bad timing, or even the actions of others. It's as though the burden of their mistakes is always conveniently shifted onto someone else. This behavior may seem trivial at first, but pragmatism philosophy urges us to pay attention to its practical consequences. When someone constantly avoids responsibility, they create a world where accountability doesn't exist. Imagine a workplace or a friendship where no one takes ownership of their actions. Instead of solving problems, they compound them by placing blame on others. What happens in the long run? Trust breaks down. Solutions are never found. And most importantly, the person avoiding responsibility is essentially living in a state of denial, unaware of how their actions are undermining their own growth. Think back to a time when you encountered someone who refused to take responsibility for their actions. You may have been directly affected by their choices, yet they denied any involvement, leaving you to pick up the pieces. At first, you might have felt frustrated, but as the situation dragged on, you probably began to feel disillusioned. The lack of accountability can create an environment where it's impossible to move forward. It's not just a moment of inconvenience, it's a barrier to growth and progress. And when it becomes a consistent pattern, it stops being a single issue and becomes a practical problem that affects everything from personal development to your ability to trust others. In the long run, these individuals may find themselves trapped in a cycle where they never face the true consequences of their actions. They can avoid responsibility today, but eventually they'll realize that the world won't cater to them forever. If you never own up to your actions, you never learn from them. And when you can't learn from mistakes, you stay stuck in the same spot, continually passing the buck to someone else. The pragmatic reality is this: avoiding responsibility today leads to stagnation tomorrow. Number 5, takes pleasure in others' suffering. There's something deeply unsettling about a person who seems to take joy in the misfortune of others. Maybe they laugh when someone falls short or act smug when they see someone struggling. It's subtle at first, perhaps a joke at someone else's expense or a sarcastic comment after a setback. But over time, it becomes more pronounced. They thrive off of the discomfort of others, seemingly delighted by their suffering. It's almost as though their happiness is directly tied to the misery of those around them. At first, you might brush it off as a joke or a casual remark, but after seeing it time and time again, you begin to realize that this isn't a fluke. It's a pattern of behavior. This behavior, when examined through a pragmatic lens, isn't just about cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It's about the long-term consequences of fostering an environment where negativity and suffering are seen as entertainment. Imagine working with someone who seems to enjoy pointing out everyone's flaws or waiting for someone to fail so they can relish the moment. The immediate effect might be mild discomfort, but over time, it chips away at the morale and energy of the group. In a social or professional setting, this creates a toxic environment where fear, rather than camaraderie, becomes the dominant force. Think back to a moment when you encountered someone who took pleasure in others' pain. Maybe it was an offhand remark when someone faced a challenge, or a laugh when someone didn't get what they wanted. You might have felt a twinge of discomfort, maybe even anger, but the deeper emotional reaction might have been a sense of disbelief. How could someone feel so good about someone else's misfortune? As this behavior continues, you start to feel disillusioned and begin to question the intentions of that person. Are they really your friend, or do they just want to see you struggle so they can feel better about themselves? This kind of attitude, when left unchecked, can spread and infect others around them. If left unchecked, people who thrive on the suffering of others can easily turn a harmonious group into a divided and toxic one. The consequences here are profound, as they go beyond just emotional distress. Over time, a person who revels in others' suffering creates an environment where people become distrustful and guarded. It becomes difficult to take risks, be open, or support one another, because everyone is constantly worried about being the next target of their cruel enjoyment. The pragmatic consequence is clear. The longer someone engages in this behavior, the more isolated and disconnected they will become, leading to a breakdown in relationships and even in their own personal well-being. Number 6. Exploits without remorse. Imagine someone who, on the surface, seems friendly, even generous. They offer help when you're in need, they lend a hand when others ask, and they show up when you least expect it. But as time goes on, you begin to notice a troubling pattern. The help they offer always seems to come with an agenda. Maybe they lend you money, but now they expect something in return. Maybe they help you on a project, but their assistance is really about using you to further their own interests. At first you might feel grateful, but then you start to feel uneasy. You start to realize that they're taking advantage of your kindness for their own benefit without any regard for your well-being. This kind of exploitation isn't always as obvious as it may seem. It can start with small, seemingly innocent actions, like offering a favor or being too helpful. But over time, you start to see the cracks in the facade. They don't help because they care. They help because it serves them. They don't give because they want to see you succeed. They give because it keeps you indebted to them. Pragmatically speaking, this is a clear case of someone trying to gain an unfair advantage by using others as stepping stones for their own success. The impact, however, is far-reaching. In the short term, you may not even notice the toll it takes on you, but in the long run, you'll find yourself emotionally and mentally drained, left wondering how you let it happen. Think back to a time when you felt used, when someone's so-called generosity started to feel more like a transaction than a true act of kindness. You might have felt conflicted. Part of you wanted to appreciate their help, but the other part felt something wasn't quite right. Over time, the relationship began to feel one-sided, and you realized you were giving more than you were receiving. This is the hallmark of exploitation, when someone takes more than they give, and they do so without any sense of guilt or remorse. The pragmatic consequences are not just emotional. These exploitative relationships lead to a lack of trust, a sense of imbalance, and ultimately the erosion of your confidence and security. And if the pattern continues, it can lead to burnout, resentment, and isolation, leaving you with nothing but empty promises and unfulfilled obligations. Number 7. Fosters division and conflict. Have you ever been around someone who seems to constantly stir the pot, fueling arguments and making even the smallest issue feel like a crisis? At first, it might seem like harmless chatter. Maybe they make a joke or throw out a controversial opinion just to see what happens. But then, as time goes on, you start to notice a pattern. No matter what the situation is, they seem to thrive on division. They love to play people against each other, whether it's in a friendship group, a family, or a workplace. They seem to get a kick out of turning people into enemies, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust in places where there was once peace. And before long, you start to feel like you're caught in the middle of something that's spinning out of control. This kind of behavior isn't just emotionally exhausting, it has real, practical consequences. When someone is consistently fostering division, they're creating an environment where cooperation becomes nearly impossible. Think about the impact this has. When people are at odds with each other, it's hard to get anything done. It's hard to be productive, to move forward, or even to enjoy simple moments of connection. Instead, everything feels like a competition, a battle for who's right and who's wrong. And the more time you spend in this kind of environment, the harder it becomes to trust anyone or feel secure in your relationships. In a pragmatic sense, this is a toxic environment that makes real progress impossible. Think back to a time when someone in your life was always stirring up conflict. Maybe they were constantly gossiping, making sly comments that set people against each other, or playing the victim to make others feel guilty. At first, it might have seemed like just another round of office drama or a casual disagreement. But as the pattern continued, you may have found yourself growing increasingly uncomfortable. The energy that once brought people together became a battleground where misunderstandings flourished and relationships broke down. It was no longer about collaboration or understanding. It was about survival and the joy of watching others fight for their own interests. In the long run, this kind of behavior doesn't just harm the immediate group, it fractures the very foundation of connection. When division is allowed to spread unchecked, it weakens the bonds between individuals, making it harder to unite under common goals. It erodes trust, breeds resentment, and ultimately leaves people isolated in their own camps, disconnected from the bigger picture. This is where pragmatism comes into play. When someone fosters division, they're not just causing short-term chaos, they're creating a long-term barrier to growth and mutual understanding. Number 8. Lacks empathy and compassion. In a world where human connection is central to everything we do, it's incredibly jarring to encounter someone who simply doesn't seem to care about anyone else's feelings or well-being. Maybe you've had a conversation with someone who, no matter how hard you try to explain your struggles, simply brushes them off or changes the subject. They might not be overtly cruel, but there's a distinct lack of empathy. When someone is going through a tough time, they don't pause to offer comfort or understanding. They simply move on, as if their own life and concerns are the only ones that matter. It's as if you're invisible in that moment, your pain nothing more than an afterthought in their eyes. This lack of empathy has deep, practical consequences, especially when it becomes a regular pattern. Think about how this lack of understanding can affect a friendship or a professional relationship. Without empathy, relationships become transactional. People don't genuinely connect, they just go through the motions. This makes it difficult to build trust, foster collaboration, or even have meaningful conversations. If someone can't put themselves in your shoes, it's nearly impossible for them to contribute positively to your life. It's like trying to navigate through a storm without a compass. You're left stranded, unsure of what direction to take next. Think back to a time when you tried to explain something personal to someone only to feel dismissed or ignored. Maybe you were going through a tough period and all you needed was a kind word or a listening ear. But instead of getting the support you needed, you were met with indifference or even frustration. This lack of empathy doesn't just sting in the moment, it lingers, leaving you feeling unheard and unsupported. Over time, it begins to build walls, and you may even start to question whether that person truly cares about you at all. In the long run, people who lack empathy create environments where others feel unsafe or uncared for. It's not just about one bad interaction, it's about the overall impact of feeling consistently misunderstood. In a pragmatic sense, this lack of compassion affects not just the individual, but everyone around them. It creates a void where connection should be, making it harder for people to bond, collaborate, or move forward in any meaningful way. And when empathy is absent, the practical effect is clear. Relationships deteriorate, trust erodes, and people feel isolated in a world where they desperately need connection. Number 9. Undermines progress for selfish goals. There's always that one person who seems to find a way to sabotage any progress, no matter how promising things might seem. Maybe they're the one who holds back critical information during a meeting, Or perhaps they downplay someone else's success to make themselves look better. It's not that they're necessarily bad at what they do, it's that they care more about their own success than the collective success of the group. They see every opportunity as a chance to elevate themselves, even if it means holding others back or stepping on toes. And the worst part, they don't even seem to feel guilty about it. In their eyes, it's all about what's best for them, no matter who gets hurt along the way. This kind of behavior is incredibly dangerous, especially in environments where collaboration and progress are key. Think about a team project where one person is constantly undermining the efforts of others, not out of incompetence, but because they are focused solely on their own advancement. Their selfishness might not be immediately obvious, but over time it becomes clear. They're working against the collective good. They make decisions that benefit only themselves, even if it means stalling progress for everyone else. And as their self-serving behavior continues, it becomes harder and harder to trust anyone or move forward with any confidence. Think back to a time when you worked on a project or in a group, only to find that one person was more concerned with their own interests than with the team's success. Maybe they claimed credit for someone else's idea, or maybe they deliberately withheld information that would have benefited everyone. The frustration starts to build, and before long, you realize that this person is holding the entire group back, not out of malice, but out of selfishness. It becomes a game of survival, where only their own success matters, and everyone else is left scrambling. The pragmatic reality of this behavior is clear. When someone undermines progress for selfish reasons, they don't just harm others, they harm themselves. Over time, their reputation suffers. They may gain small victories along the way, but they'll always be viewed as a threat to collaboration and progress. The collective goal becomes harder to achieve, and any meaningful advancement becomes stalled. And in the long run, the cost of their selfishness is not just a temporary setback, it's a permanent disruption to the growth and success of everyone involved. If you've made it this far, drop a thumbs up. This shows that you're part of the 0.01% who take the time to recognize the toxic behavior around them and are committed to making positive changes in your life. Recognizing these signs is just the first step, and with the insights from Pragmatism philosophy, you can better navigate the relationships in your life and protect your energy. If you're serious about creating a healthier, more focused life, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join a community that's dedicated to personal growth and empowerment. By subscribing, you'll ensure you never miss out on the tools and knowledge that can help you succeed in every aspect of life.